service that we have. LinkedIn has purchased lynda.com, but lynda.com is really of tremendous interest right now. So many people are trying to improve their job skills or are working from home and need to say they've done something to their boss, and you can take online courses, get badges, get recognition, get certificates through lynda.com. And that is a program that the library itself subscribes to on behalf of the community. So again, if you don't have a library card, you do need an active card, and we're happy to set you up so you've got access to lynda.com. This slide just shows you a smattering of the really robust programming we have. We deal with early literacy, of course. The upper slide with the little tiny child in front of the computer, that is actually a pre-packaged computer program that is all set up for little tiny children. So it's appropriate content and is interactive. So it's not just a child sitting in front of a screen. It's actually the child interacting with whatever is being taught on the screen. The young lady with the t-shirt is promoting our Bookworms program, which is a book discussion program for young folks. The young man in the center with his superhero program cape on is from our summer reading program. The young folks in the lower right corner are one of our STEM programs. We do have a variety of activities to support STEM activities. And then the upper right corner is an example of one of our discovery backpacks. We have a variety of backpacks filled with all kinds of things and books and activities to do on different themes. And this one happens to be our dinosaur pack. So next slide. We do support very heavily the early literacy, just teaching parents, teaching grandparents, helping along with what early literacy could be to really support reading skills when kids get into the school system. It's not it's not always obvious how to play well and successfully. So we're really happy to be able to bring in coaches and speakers and people that might just give a little level of confidence to families as they're raising their young children. And obviously we want to have wonderful readers as well. So that's another reason for us being such active supporters of early literacy activities. Next. Summer reading, of course, people think of the library as summer reading programs, and we have tremendous amount of support in the community from our partners. Here's the fire department and our local musician and our public works department all coming for activities during the summer. And we don't know what this coming summer is going to hold. It certainly will look a little different than our past. We won't have large groups of kids together likely, but we'll try to do something that still brings everyone together in some way. And we are expecting to use a platform called Beanstack, which is an online reading program we started last year, fortunately. So now we have some experience with it, and we will use that program to create our summer reading program. Next. We do, as I mentioned earlier, have interest in supporting STEM activities, and we do have our own Minecraft program. We also have robots, so where we teach coding to the younger kids. And then we do have a partnership with Girls Who Code, and that's the picture on the left of some of those young women learning how to code, with wonderful mentorships as part of that program. So this is something that we not only have as a program within our own purpose, but we also coordinate with the school department and try to support their coding activities as well. Next slide. The Teen Advisory Board, TAB as we like to call them, is at this point I think we've got a couple of dozen teens that come in once a week and get together and plan their own teen activities. Several times a year we have teen lock-ins, and they take over the library and do lots of really fun programs. And this is after one of the TAB teen lock-ins, and just all of the participants and planners in a group shot. Next slide. We have a great interest in intergenerational activity, and we'd like to do a lot more, but at this point we're proud of what we are able to do. And we certainly understand that there's one of the wonderful ways for us to make that connection is through technology. Young people teaching older people how to do technology. The picture in the middle is a young person learning how to knit during our Knitters program. So there are lots of opportunities. Minecraft, interestingly, is another way we're doing the intergenerational connections. We are offering programs to teach parents how to do Minecraft so they can use the game with their kids. So it's we're very aware that this is an opportunity for us always. Next slide. Home delivery has been a service we've offered since the 1970s, and it's still a secret to some folks. We offer delivery to shut-ins, and that shut-in category is very broad in terms that we could have somebody who's just recovering from surgery. We might have a young family who's had a new baby in the family, and the older siblings can't get out because mom and dad are busy. So we're able to deliver a pack of materials for the young kids. So the range of what this entails is very broad. We do offer services to our assisted living and nursing care facilities, and we do, as much as possible, offer a one-on-one experience to these folks. The deliveries are made by volunteers and occasionally by staff members, but we try to develop a relationship with whomever is receiving the materials so that there's some companionship support there as well. Next slide. We have a very small programming budget, but we do wondrous things. We have last year's attendance in programs was over 12,000 people. We had 736 programs, and the only way that was possible with $1,000 budget was because we have really phenomenal partnerships with groups all over the state. And so this is just an example of some of the people that we have done programming with. Next slide. Friends of the Library, as Peter mentioned, is another 501c3 that does support the library, and their primary fundraiser is the annual book sale. The proceeds from the book sale go to help support our museum passes, the book page, which a lot of people are finding available now online, and then they support our summer reading program. And without their support of the summer reading program, that program could not take place. And they also support collections for us. So, next slide. And volunteers, we love our volunteers. We have volunteers of all ages, which I'm really happy about. Last year we had over 11,100 hours of volunteer service, 34 volunteers, and they represented ages from about 12 through seniors. So multi-age and a great service to us. Next slide. So we have, again, non-traditional services. We are a heating and cooling center, and we are actually listed as such in the emergency management category. We are not a shelter, and the distinction there is that we do not offer food or overnight stay, but we do offer a space for people who need to stay cold or hot, depending on the climate. And this is the October storm that we had, where we had people camped out for a full week while power was restored in Scarborough, and the meeting room was set up as home offices. We had people plugged in everywhere. We had power strips and extension cords, and we offered beverages and some snacks for folks just to really make it a homey situation. We do not have a generator, and that is something you will have often seen in my CIP request, and it's always deferred, but it's still an important need for our library to serve in this function. So there have been a few situations where we've not been able to provide this service because we did not have power. For the most part, we are in a location where power is restored very quickly. So we have been very fortunate. Next slide.
Nancy, can I interrupt for just one second?
Sure.
The YouTube situation has been resolved, and this has been recorded from the beginning. So even if you
Great.
jump on YouTube now, you can essentially quote, go to the beginning of this and watch it as if it's in real time. So there was a small glitch, but it has all worked out now. So I just wanted to give everybody the update. I apologize for interrupting.
No problem. Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
We continue with the theme of slightly non-traditional, but not so non-traditional now as the library community is stepping forward nationally. We do have a role in emergency response and preparedness, and we are considered essential services in FEMA's categories now. We do have a role in the community to teach emergency preparedness. So you'll often see me out at public events teaching how to put together your own personal go kit. We also, as I mentioned, have the resiliency work materials on our website, and we are also a member of the National Weather Service Weather Ready Nation Ambassador Program, which allows us materials to send out through our Facebook page about weather readiness, just how to be aware of different weather conditions, how to prepare yourself. So these are things that we I think actually make Scarborough Public Library unique. We have led the community as well as the state in this role from a public library perspective. Next slide. This is an example of what we like to think of as our environmental stewardship role. We do have an electric vehicle charger now, powered by solar panels. We also have solar panels on the roof. We have a chemical-free lawn. Many people don't realize that we're very proud of the dandelions that grow on our lawn. And in fact, we feature our dandelions on our library card. This is just a few examples of how we really believe we can set a standard for environmental stewardship within the community. We had planned something special for Earth Day, and that's not happening either. We have LED lights out in our parking lot. We were the first retrofit for LED parking lot lights. We also have watt meters available for loan when we open again. It's a little device you can plug your appliances in and learn how much wattage you're using. So the kilowatt meters are something that we also leveraged on behalf of the library community with Efficiency Maine, and we're happy that we still have some of those meters available. Next slide. And then this is just an example of the characteristics that that our community members turn to us for. What makes us a special library? And we have the resources. We are responsive. We do have meeting space. We can convene or gather conversations. We have a very high level of trust within the community, and that's actually a national characteristic that's been tracked as well. Librarians are very high, either the top or one of the top most trusted professionals. And that's, we're proud of that, but it wasn't until we actually asked the question that we learned that. We are a neutral party, and we're also extremely accessible. And that's not just to handicap folks, but to anyone who needs to have access to a particular service. We pride ourselves in that. Next slide, and over to Peter.
Thank you, Nancy. Now I'd like to take the council through a walk through the current building and describe a little bit of how we arrived at the decision a few years ago that we needed to start planning more specifically for an expansion. As I mentioned earlier, the building that's presently there was built in 1989 with an expansion potential or need anticipated in 10 years. It was built as a box with wings with a big open floor plan with very little supporting beams, and specifically was designed in the middle of the lot to allow either side to be expanded or both sides. Remarkably prescient back in 1989, Nancy insisted that the slab be prepared with conduit grid, which allows basically any type of cabling, power, HVAC, or other supporting utilities to be run through the existing foundation without the need to having to rip anything up. So it can be upgraded fairly easily and extended fairly easily. The mechanicals were all designed on one side toward the back for easy access. And most importantly, on the site itself, drainage was sized for expansion, and that also included the parking lot. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the library interior back in 1990. And if you go to the next slide, the exact same views are the library interior today. So you can see what's been filled in the interior in the 31 years that the library has been at this site. Next slide, please. So in roughly 2016, we decided to sit down and do a strategic plan over the next 2 years. One of our board members did what he called SWOT analysis, which is taking an assessment of our strengths and weaknesses and look at the opportunities and threats that we could take advantage of in order to plan for the expansion that we knew we needed to start planning for. We did surveys online, in-house. We brought in focus groups. Nancy and other library staff attended seminars. We did a community scan. And then as a board, when we got all that data in, we set strategic priorities and came up with annual work plans for us to start this expansion, as well as to increase the services and maintain the services as the town grew. We did a survey update in 2018, and essentially nothing dramatic changed. Some of the needs changed and rose to the top, but overall it validated what we had started in 2016. Next slide, please. And that summary dictated our strategic priorities: provide access to high quality services and collections, promote lifelong learning, engage the community in developing and promoting resources and partnership opportunities, and provide a versatile, welcoming, and safe space that serves as an anchor for our community. Next slide, please. Well over 3/4 of the participants in the library believe what we have as strengths is that we have a convenient location. It's an important public space for the community that anyone can use for free, and is an essential service for a growing town like Scarborough. Next slide, please. The future, as we learned and are learning, is not about collection storage. As Nancy mentioned earlier, it's very unlikely that we're going to increase dramatically the amount of current materials that we have, but access to information is the key. Spaces are not for storing the books anymore as much. They need to be flexible. They need to separate for activity and sound levels, and that need to accommodate groups large and small, neat and constructive, like makerspace. We also heard that we wanted intergenerational socialization, places that function more as a community living room, and certain amenities that we've considered but don't figure into the plans going forward. Well, although outside seating is a cafe, fireplace. I don't know where the pool came from. I think that was, I don't know whose idea that was. The next slide, please. So in order to move that process forward, last January 2019, we put out an RFP for a library planning consultant and ultimately hired Anders Dahlgren from Library Planning Associates, who has a national reputation and has done an outstanding job indicating to us, after many interviews with the staff, feedback from the architects, to indicate what the needs were for the library. He also did a comparative analysis with other libraries at the state, regional, and national level, and determined our growth needs and growth trends, sufficient to dictate the space that we would be needing going forward and the types of programs that we would be needing going forward. This, I think, is one of our most important slides. It indicates what Scarborough library size is relative to other communities in the state. And the number in the far right column is the most important, which is the square foot of the library per person in the town. And as you can see, and these are comparatively sized towns generally in the state, as well as some slightly different sized towns, but in the general area of York and Cumberland County. And right now we have 0.64 square foot of library space per person for 12,884 square feet. The proposal that we've put forward to 30,000 square foot space would only increase that to 1.5, which is candidly solidly in the middle of the pack. We're not proposing to build the Taj Mahal, nothing ostentatious, but something, commensurate with a town of our size and the projected growth, yet being efficient and conservative when it comes to utilizing the resources that we do have. Next slide, please. In order to move that process forward, once we had engaged and gotten 90% of the report from Anders Dahlgren, our library programming consultant, we put out an RFP and interviewed several architects, and ultimately hired Scott Sirens architect from Portland, who parenthetically also did the Portland Public Library, who has been assisting us since the fall, September, October time period, and started site permitting research and preliminary approvals with DEP. What he did is he tested the space needs within the available site. We had considered the possibility of picking up and moving the library somewhere else in town, but those numbers just didn't make any sense compared to what we had in terms of the planning that we do, the future planning that we did have, and the space that we had in the library and the current building. Next slide, please. This ultimately was the footprint that we've determined best fits our need. They had proposed 4 different new expansion projects for us. And ultimately, given all the constraints on the site, the wetlands, the need for the additional parking, some of the services that we wanted to offer, such as a drive-through window for at least drop-off, and all those others ultimately dictated this footprint as being the most efficient and the most able to give us the services that we'd like to offer in the future. Next slide, please. And those specific space needs are a collection space, meeting rooms, flexible maker space, separate teens and children's services areas, quiet areas isolated from the aforementioned areas, a gallery, a computer lab, sufficient staff workspace for, again, a library of this size in a town of this size. And I know this sounds obvious, but storage space for, taking care of the property itself. Next slide, please. Ultimately, the interior design started fleshing out in February and early March of this year. This is the general design that we settled in on, although we put that part of the project on hold while we moved to the next part, which I'm not going to show you right now, right this second. But I did want to highlight the four major areas that we have decided to focus in on. The upper left is the adult collection room, which would be an expansion over the space we have. On the upper right is the youth services area. Both of these would be isolated from each other, so both sonically and visually, so that folks in the adult collection area can have a quieter space, and the folks in the youth services area might tolerate a higher level of noise. We also isolated the staff area on the lower left side of the slide, complete with the drop-off bin on all the way in the far left of in the image. And on the right, and this was very, very important, a public meeting space that's essentially double what we have right now. And most importantly, it's completely isolatable, meaning even if the library is closed with appropriate security and code clearances, someone can come in and use the building securely and be isolated from the rest of the secure library services. Again, all of those things were designed around an existing box building with the expansion potential for two different wings. Next slide, please. In order to move the next part of the process forward, we decided to engage a fundraising consultant to figure out how much capacity the town of Scarborough had for a donation like this. This is essentially very, very similar to the YMCA project several years ago. But the point of this exercise, the point of this engagement is to determine community interest in the library and the capacity for private support. Candidly, that's where we were in the process when the COVID situation came up. We've talked to Mr. DeMont, the owner of the company, at least 3 times on Zoom conferences just like this, and he highly recommended that this is a time not to be asking your supporters for support, but to be supporting your supporters. So we've put that process on hold, pending outcomes, pending where we go with the economy right now. Next slide, please. So again, reviewing the CIP request that we made in fiscal year 2019, fiscal year 2020, we requested and received $140,000, and so far we spent $32,000 on the space planning. That was the consultant Anders Dahlgren that I had identified before, and Scott Simon Architects. We spent $108,000. What we are requesting for fiscal year 2021 is to continue that design work with the architect. And we're also going to be utilizing some of our own funds, some of our earmarked funds for some of the engineering, and also money for a fundraising campaign, some of which is preliminary, meaning we will determine the capacity of the town and how much that might yield in a fair fundraising campaign as part of that process. And then the big ask would be in August, we will be asking for the town council's approval to put out a bond referendum to the voters of $12 million, which is right now our best estimate of the final construction cost on this, assuming some level of private support as well, in addition to that number. the difficulty with that right now is it's, even though construction costs were very, very expensive just a few weeks ago, where those ultimately land in the next 6 to 8 months is not an easy thing to figure out right this second, but that is the best number that we have from the professionals we've spoken to so far. Next slide, please. Okay, I think I've covered those points already. So the final project cost is pending engineering review and more firm construction estimates as we get closer to the project. But we believe that that is a fair estimate for what we have right now. The private fundraising is expected to supplement that. Again, that is on hold until the situation settles down. Nancy, I think this is where you pick it up.
Yes, last slide. This is our commitment to the community, is that we will do very careful planning, respectful planning. We will communicate what our needs are, and we will make a concerted effort to raise money to help lighten the burden of what we understand is a challenging tax environment. So we are committed to the community to be responsive and to be providing the very best library that this community deserves. And that is our presentation. We'd be open to questions.
Sorry, Councillor Gleisting, you want to open it up?
I have what I think is a quick question. What is your interaction at all, or if any, with the school libraries? Not we all know a bunch of kids go to the library, but you know, they run libraries themselves. And what does that interaction look like?
We do coordinate with the schools. We're more actively coordinating with the younger grade librarians, actually sharing programming and book discussions. But each library in a school is set up to support the curriculum of the school. So their library collection looks quite different than our library collection, which is more oriented to recreational reading and what we call discovery. If a child just comes in with an interesting question, is there a book there to support them, versus a school library, which is very much tailored to supporting the curriculum, multiple copies of titles and lots of support for whatever is being taught that year. So they have a different role to play, but we certainly do have a communication stream with them, and in some cases actually do programming together. And certainly we support each other in the summer reading program. That's a huge collaborative effort.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Caterina?
Yeah, and I noted that you had $140,000 that had already been invested. Were there monies invested in previous years prior to the one that you had on the slide?
Not for this program, no.
Not for planning?
No, the
or
140
preparing?
represents two different years. It was
Okay, all right.
100 the first year and 40 last year.
Okay.
So that's the total of the 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Clucci?
Sorry, I was on mute. So is closure been the standard response for COVID-19 for most public libraries, or has anybody experimented or evaluated other ways to get materials out to?
It is currently the norm, and it's been a hot topic, as you might have imagined. But in the world of keeping people home, we don't want to be an attractive nuisance. We really want to reinforce the message that you need to stay home and stay safe. And if we were to provide, which we have discussed, curbside delivery, we have personal protective equipment we have to deal with. We have to sanitize materials, which is detrimental to the material. So you go down a rabbit's hole there of challenges that really defeats the whole point of keeping people home. We have a similar philosophy when it's time for a winter storm and people shouldn't be out on the road. Our staff may get into the building okay, but we don't want the rest of the public out on the road. So you might actually see a public library shut down to keep people off the road. It's remarkable the attraction factor that we have for some folks who just don't think logically. They want their book. So we have intentionally shut down, and we intentionally shut down any curbside delivery activity as well.
I have a quick question. Before the COVID-19 situation, did you have any projections for the capital campaign? How deep did you guys go into, where were you in the process of the capital campaign, and was there any forecasting?
Not yet. That was the whole point of the timing. We wanted to have a number ready for our presentation to you in August. And we may still make it, but we can't be quite that optimistic yet. The point of a feasibility study is actually to come up with that number.
Yeah.
Even before you do any campaign or fundraising, you find out what's an appropriate number for the community.
Councilor Gleason?
So when you were going through your, design process, did you look at any alternatives, that would have been okay if we just add the youth area, that's going to cost 7 million, or or whatever. Did you come up with any different tiers for expansion?
No, we have intentionally not done that because the entire building needs help. And the cost effectiveness of tearing things up, a public space like that, doesn't, in our mind, it doesn't make sense to interrupt a major building that's an open floor plan and fairly easy to attach to. For us to do it in segments would be so disruptive and counterproductive to the goal that we have. It's a good question and one that we have discussed, but it's not something that we actively pursued because it just, the needs that we have are so global that to favor one section wasn't responsive to what the community needs are.
And more specifically, we did run that by the architects, Counselor, just so that specific idea. And candidly, we throttled back on some of the bigger parts of the expansion that they were, having us consider, in favor of the most efficient, sort of the sweet spot in the middle, where you're building just enough to get the most bang for your buck in terms of the expansion, without the detriment that Nancy just identified, which is you got to shut it down several times if you're doing it in pieces. I mean, it's going to be disruptive enough, and we are going to be shut down if this goes forward. But the point is, we vetted all of those things along with the move, and that the installation that we've presented is the most efficient, most conservative, best bang for the buck that we feel that we can, responsibly advocate to the town.
And with the total cost, so the 12 million was for the bond. It's not the total cost of the project.
That's correct.
So
So the
with that-
supplemental money will come from fundraising.
At the total cost, what is the total cost, and what did you come in at per square foot?
We don't have a total cost yet because we don't have the site engineering work results yet. And that's one of the challenges we have. We've really been struggling trying to get the site work figured out. When we've got the site figured out, then we can do the footprint, and then we can start running the numbers. So we are really eager to get all of those numbers together, so we have a real honest number to share and discuss. And we just don't have that yet.
And I mean, I know you're asking for another 350, but will you have cost per square footage before we approve or don't approve the 350, or will you not have those numbers? You need the 350 to get more numbers.
We need 350 to get more numbers.
So I apologize. I think I might be asking the same question twice. So I apologize. But to go off Councilor Glycin's question, I mean, the back of the napkin analysis is the cost per square feet does seem quite high if we're looking at a $17,000 square foot expansion at a price tag of north of 12 million. Is there a reason? Are there like some real quick reasons why it's predicted that that cost per square feet would be so high, or coming from somebody that knows nothing about construction?
Well, and I'm not the right person to answer the question exactly, but that would be an architect's answer for us to really make sure we have the right square footage numbers. I can tell you some of what I've learned is that you have to anticipate the square footage of renovation of the existing space in addition to the cost of the new space. So that's one of the factors. And we also need to factor in there will be a relocation cost. We have to do something about services while we are under construction. So there are a couple of different factors there that will all have to be added into that square footage number. Again, the site work is such an important piece for us to start with. And that has been worked on, but it's just the DEP is so backed up, it's really difficult to get any information from them, even before COVID.
And I can supplement that just a little bit. I know our architects, if they're not listening in on the YouTube, assuming that that's working, is they're willing to answer specific questions like that. They specifically reached out to us before this meeting and said, even if we can't listen in, or obviously they're not speaking, if you have any specific questions, and I think that's a key question that we can have them answer.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. In form of email, that would be awesome. So, Councilor Hayes.
Yeah, just a quick question, because I'm not sure when people will be listening in as we kind of move through the budget process. But just kind of a quick question. As you probably know, we spent about 3 hours yesterday afternoon, talking about the budget, where we are. Came in, the first sort of look at the numbers was 5.5% increase in the mill rate. We kind of came to a consensus and reduced that to about 2% for the next round of budgets, which means about finding savings of $2 million, which is a pretty daunting number. And that would bring it down to about a 2% increase. Is the work that's been done today, can it be put on a shelf and dusted off and reused in another year? I mean, this is a perfect storm if, as you're looking at 350 for, fundraising campaigns and others, and a $12 million bond in November. The timing just is not, that's tough. So I guess the real question I want everybody to hear is the work that's been done, do we lose the work that's been done? Or if we were to roll this forward, would that work still be applicable?
We can ask that question of our architects. My understanding is the work that's been done is still valid. Our timing is in part, we've been working on a calendar that's based on where we fit within the capital projects calendar of the town.
Yeah.
And we have been very, very sensitive to making sure we fit the right time frame. And so we've been working off of that time frame very diligently. So
Yeah,
that's been our goal right along, and
Yeah.
that's why the timing is what it is.
No, I understand that. It's just that was fine till about a month ago, and this was just in anybody's calendar, any place. These are certainly unusual times with unprecedented sort of challenges for all of us. So I just thought the question needed to be asked, because that we are going to be faced with those types of conversations in the next 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Councilor Clucci.
Are you anticipating any savings due to the closure this year that might be available for next year's budget?
I anticipate there will be some loss of revenue. First of all, let me start on the back side of that. We are not receiving any fines or fees at this point, so we will be down in revenue. However, the PPP, the protection plan, may result in some available funds by the time we are through the full cycle. If the library has a balance in its operating account, it gets applied to the following year's budget automatically. So we don't lose, we as a town don't lose that money. We go through the audit process and then we apply it to the following year's budget. So if there is a savings, you will see it in the 2022, am I getting that right? 2022 budget.
How much was your PPP loan?
Roughly 185, right?
Good memory.
That's my memory.
I thought it was supposed to be 12 million, right?
185, he's got it. It's 184. Yeah, 184. It's the value of your payroll plus your utilities. That's the way the program is organized.
I'm signing the document, so I know how
Yeah.
much is in there.
Okay, that's great.
Well, listen, I think we are at 6 o'clock, so I really do appreciate both of you coming with the presentation. Peter, if we get a follow-up on some of the basic 101 construction cost questions for myself, I'd greatly appreciate that, and I'd share it with the rest of the council.
Happy to do that. And I know the architects would be anxious to answer any other questions, follow up, or that one that you
Yeah,
might.
so, and I can act as a liaison to maybe start compiling some stuff and forward it to you guys as long. So this doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. I think it's important that as we have more questions, I'll forward them straight to you guys. And
Absolutely. We have our regular a board meeting tomorrow night, and we've been meeting on a weekly basis until this thing settles down.
Yeah. Yeah, and if any members of the public want to see your answers, they email me directly and I'll gladly send them your answers.
And questions too.
Yeah, that's yes. And if you're in the public, I see some at least one person wants to make a public comment. What we'll typically do in this situation, I will end the workshop and we'll start the regular town council meeting within minutes. And the first thing we do after the Pledge of Allegiance is general public comment. You can comment on the library if you want to, if that's why you're raising your hand. So we're going to end the workshop, transition into the town council meeting. And if you'd like to make a comment about this workshop, please do so. Just wait till after the Pledge of Allegiance and we'll take it from there. So again, thank you guys. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Counselors, is there an appetite to take 3 minutes or does everybody want to roll right into it? 3 minutes? Okay, we're going to take 3 minutes. We'll start the town council 5 minutes. Counselor Johnson said. We'll start the council meeting at 6:07. For the 2 people in the audience, I see you and you will have time to comment right after the Pledge of Allegiance, just so you know.
Paul, I'm hanging on here just for the question and then I'll pull off. This is Peter Hayden.
Yep, that's okay with me. It might not be a question, Peter, but yes, hang on. Okay, are we all here? I believe we are all here. So I would like to call this meeting to order. This is the April 15th, 2020 regular town council meeting for the town of Scarborough. The first item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Tody, would you like to do roll call, please?
Yes, my apologies for the dog. Counselor Clucci?
Here.
Counselor Hayes?
Here.
Counselor Gleisteen?
Here.
Counselor Katerina?
Here,
Counselor Johnson?
Here.
Counselor Hamel?
Here.
Chairman Johnson?
Here. Thank you. Item number 4 is general public comments for items that are not on the agenda. And I am going to go to Ms. Gagnon, I believe. And when I allow you to talk, I believe your mic may be off by default. So please just look to see if your mic is on.
Okay, it's on.
You got it. Good job.
Okay,
Good job.
hello.
Yep, we can hear you.
Mike, what?
Ask if they need you to vote. You're voting on this.
You need my vote for the noise in, of the Pine Point Grill?
Do we need your what? I'm sorry.
You need my vote on my concern about the
Yeah.
Pine Point Grill. I do not want it. I have enough to listen to every night when Bailey Campground is opened up. And then if I have that on top of it, I'm done living here in Scarborough, and I've been here 80 years of my life. I think I have the right to have some privacy when I want to sit outdoors in the evening without a whole lot of commotion. And it's bad enough I have to listen to Bailey's. Now I'm going to have to listen to this on top of it. And they've been serving dinner on the patio long when Sheila had it. So it's nothing new about serving out there. So I don't know why we need music.
Okay, thank you very much. Could we just get your address before I put
It's
you back in the audience?
28 CB's Landing Road.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And now I'm going to go to Miss Foley Ferguson. Oh, she's using an older version of Zoom. So Sue, you're throwing everything off. So bear with me 1 second. Hey, Sue.
You can see me too.
You are, you're in the meeting, so behave yourself.
Oh gosh, okay, sorry. Okay. All right, this has nothing to do with any agenda item. This is just in general, okay? 331 Black Point Road. These are unprecedented times, and it's difficult to get people to pay attention to anything other than their own health and the progress of this COVID-19 global pandemic. You would have think the world would have slowed down, but everyone I speak with seems to be crazy busy trying to figure out how to work remotely or get their children to do schoolwork, to help aging parents, neighbors, or figure out technology, or most of the time, all of the above. I spent 2 weeks recently with my 84-year-old mother, helping her get on Zoom. Well, not the whole 2 weeks helping her, but it was not without challenges. But my attempts to get my mother-in-law have been futile. We haven't done that yet. So these are 2 individual examples of people that are similar to those in our town who may not have the skills or equipment to navigate this new technology. So I applauded you guys in a previous note, and I still think it's a good thing to try, but business as usual in these unusual times is shouldn't happen. A business as usual counselor might say, well, why should we wait? Why should we wait until people have been informed and are up to speed on a particular budget or ordinance or whatever it is? Isn't it their responsibility? They were late to the game. Is that our fault, the town council? Okay, my answer to that business as usual person might be that you guys were elected most of you actually were elected because you had a certain issue that you yourselves were not feeling you were listened to, whether it was right-of-ways, school issues, taxes, or the budget. And so it really doesn't matter why you were not heard. Citizens were not heard, and you ran for town council to make sure they would be. So as you do these Zoom meetings and proceed forward, I would urge you to proceed, and maybe you already have talked about this, more cautiously, more slowly, within the legal requirements, of course, because this pandemic does cause issues with technology. For example, I just got a Cumberland County Democratic Committee email, and here's just a brief thing what it said. Well, we thought we had it all figured out, but technology happened. We had a Zoom account, so that box is checked. We got our own YouTube channel. Check that box. Zoom hijacked the Zoom accounts we had as individuals. So we fixed that by getting new emails. Check. We set up the whole meeting, and then Zoom changed the security. Oh my gosh, we managed to figure it out. Okay, checks. Well, anyway, on and on and on. They canceled their meeting. Those are smart people. What I'm saying is that some people can't figure this stuff out. So as you consider your items on the agenda, such as the budget and ordinances, I hope you will consider that nobody is going to fault this council for being cautious, complete, slow, methodical, and conservative. They will, however, fault you if they feel they aren't being heard. And I'm pretty tech savvy, but I was like amazed that you guys are doing this. And I think it's great, but I also think that it's something to consider. Just in my trying to get people informed of an ordinance, I've had to speak with them 5, 6, 7 times. So yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bear with me, I have to put you in the virtual audience now.
Why am I showing, by the way? Can't I quit
You
that?
said that you have an older version of Zoom, so I don't have a choice. So.
Oh,
Okay, that was bad timing, sorry. And Mr. Gleason, I am now going to allow you to talk. Can you hear us, sir? No? Okay, I'll pull him back up if. Okay, I think, Ms. Gagnon, do you have something more to say?
What?
You had your hand raised. Did you have anything more to say, or are you all done?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, we have another one. Ms. Corliss, can you hear us?
Hi, yes.
Yep. Go ahead.
Hi, and thank you very much. I just wanted to say my husband and I own a home at 7 CV Landing. So we're really, really, really close to Pine Point Grill. When we're there, we take care of our grandchildren. I've already written a long epistle to all the town councilors, and I do hope you really took the time to read it. We are strongly opposed to Pine Point Grill's request for an exemption from the Good Neighbor Ordinance. We ask that the town council consider the concerns of the tax-paying property owners of this residential neighborhood. Please, please vote your conscience and promote the standards of the Good Neighbor Ordinance, which state, and I quote, allow residents to enjoy their homes and property, preserve peace and quiet in our neighborhoods, help maintain property values, that's a key aspect also, and prevent disputes among neighbors. And I might add, it might save the police department from getting a number of complaints. As Helen has already mentioned, we hear everything, all the announcements, everything from Bailey's. It's just the way that that noise flows. And where Pine Point Grill is, that's going to flow right into my backyard and right down CV Landing. So everyone down the road on Bradford and on Ocean View are all going to be inundated with this amplified music that at first may seem very simple and very benign. But if you grant that exemption from the Good Neighbor Ordinance, that gives them the license to go. Thank you very much for your time, and please vote your conscience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gleason, you can speak now. Or Mr. Blodgett, either one.
Yes, I'm Don Blodgett. I live at 9 Seavy's Landing.
Yep.
And I'm speaking to the application of Pine Point Grill for an exemption from the Good Neighbor ordinance. And I just want to state that I'm opposed to that. It seems like we put ordinances in place to protect the citizens, and I think if we uphold it, it protects us all and makes them a good neighbor. That's all I have to say on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I believe, no. Mr. Gleason, I'm going to give you one more try here, and if we can't do it, I'm going to have to move on. Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to move on, but if you would like to email me directly, I can read your comments into public comment if you'd like. The email address is towncouncil@scarboroughmaine.org. If you would like to email, I'll make sure that your comments are read before the end of the meeting. Or we could try this one more time, but I don't think this is going to work. Mr. Landry, I'm going to allow you to speak now.
He shows on mute.
Yeah, Mr. Landry, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
We can, yep.
Okay. This is Paul. I'm from the 240 Pine Point Road. I wasn't aware that this request was going to cause so much heartburn. But my question is, will I be able to speak when the agenda item comes up?
Yes, Mr. Landry, I've been a little bit flexible here simply because of the format and the new format. There is a public hearing and action on this. So when we get to your action item, there'll be time before that for anybody to comment as well. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I've just been simply flexible given the circumstances. So.
No worries.
Yeah. And Ms. Cox, I believe I will allow you to talk. Steffi, can you hear us?
I can. Actually, my name is Alberta Follensby. I'm filling in for Steffi tonight. I serve as board president of Project Grace. And on behalf of Project Grace, I'd like to thank town officials, employees, and counselors for partnering with Project Grace and the library for the Scarborough Helps initiative, especially the counselors and other officials who've been making phone calls to Scarborough residents. This is important work, and we're neighbors helping neighbors. So I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am not seeing, thank you for everybody for bearing with me there. That was Felt like a radio host for a second there. That was difficult. It's a tough switchboard. With that, we will close public comments, and item number 5 is approval of 2 sets. Oh, Ms. Gleisten?
Point of information, Mr. Chair. Can you just repeat the email that people can email you if they'd like to speak and they're on the phone, or if that doesn't work, they could just have it read?
Yep. Town Council at scarboroughmaine.org. Town Council at scarboroughmaine.org, and I have my email pulled up here in front of me. So, okay, with that, we're going to move to item number 5, which is the approval of 2 sets of minutes. The April 1st, 2020 regular Town Council minutes, and the April 8th, 2020 special Town Council meeting.
Move
Do I
to
have a motion?
So moved.
second.
And any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Counselor Clucci?
Yes.
Is it a roll call or is it?
Yes.
Yes, it is. It's everything's roll call.
All right. Counselor Clucci?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes?
Yes.
Counselor Gleisten? Yes. Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
The vote was unanimous.
Item number 6, adjustments to the agenda. I don't believe there are any adjustments to the agenda. Item number 7 are the items to be signed, treasurer's warrants. I will get to that when it's appropriate. So now we have some order number 20022, a 6 p.m. public hearing on the proposed amendments to chapter 405, the Town of Scarborough zoning ordinance. And this is brought to us from the town planner, but I suspect Tom will.
JJ's planning director is an attendee. If you permit him, he could introduce this item and the following one as well, if that would be
Okay,
helpful.
absolutely. Yep.
Jay?
Good evening. Yep, so thank you very much. Let's see, so as Tom just said, actually, I'm going to speak to this item and the following item, order 20-23, as they really are very similar, and I'm happy to answer questions as we go. But essentially, in short, there's been a change at the Cumberland County Registry, actually all the state registries. They used to require that the plans that were recorded on a Mylar sheet of paper. This is sort of a different, heavier sheet of paper. And they've actually gone away from that. They now will not accept Mylars. Our ordinances require final plans to be on a Mylar. So this change in both chapter 405 and chapter 406 simply seek to strike the language that final plans be on Mylars and just be standard paper plans. So happy to answer questions from there.
Any questions? This is just a public hearing, so we're not taking action on this tonight, I believe. So are there any questions from counselors? Counselor Gleisten?
Yeah, I would just refer to first reading where there were a number of questions asked and answered. This is the public hearing, but if people do have specific questions, definitely email us. But I think Jay's described it really well, and there were some forthcoming questions in that.
Good. Any members of the public? Mr. Gleason, I'm going to wait until the order that I believe you want to speak on to try one more time for you. Are there any members of the public that want to speak to this order? None? Okay. Order number 20023. It's a public hearing on the proposed amendments to chapter 406, the Town of Scarborough subdivision ordinance. So, Jay?
Simply restate what I said earlier. This is an amendment to the subdivision ordinance to require final plans to be submitted on a piece of paper rather than a Mylar.
Okay. Any members of the public like to make comment? No? Okay. Jay, thanks for popping in.
I think I'm here for the next one too.
Oh, yes. Okay, you are. So you're staying. Order number 20031 is a 6 p.m. public hearing on the new small wireless facility licensing ordinance. And the sponsor is the ordinance committee. So I think I'll let Councilor Katarina first and Jay second. Or vice versa, whatever you guys
Hold
prefer.
on, I forgot to unmute myself. Yes, this came before the council early in the year. It's been through the ordinance committee for the last couple of months. And it is now here for the public. And I'll let Jay talk to the particulars on it, but in essence, our ordinances were out of line with state and federal regulations to do with small cell facilities. So Jay, take it away.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jean Marie and council. As Jean Marie just mentioned, there really this ordinance is coming to you by way of changes at the state and federal level in terms of regulation around small cell wireless facilities, generally referred to as 5G, and their installation and application, particularly within the public right-of-way, and that's an important distinction. Essentially, what the state and federal action have said is that towns must allow for these facilities within the public right-of-way. If the towns do not have an ordinance in place, then they can happen sort of at the provider's discretion, so to speak. But there is sort of limited ability, or the regulations do provide some level of review authority by the town. And those were sort of addressed in my memo to you, that the sort of three main areas relate to a schedule of fees, general aesthetics for the facilities, and really around what they call a shot clock, or a time to issue a permit once an application is received. And so the ordinance that was brought before you and addressed at first reading attempts to do that. Staff, I'm certainly not an expert in 5G technology or wireless technology, and we've done our best to do our due diligence and looking at what other communities and sort of national outfits have recommended in this regards. Interesting to sort of note that there hasn't been too much action on this in the state of Maine, so really had to look outside of the state in a lot of ways. But I will note that the town has received interest from at least one provider. And so they've been accommodating for the last few months as we work through the ordinance and understanding that we're trying to get something in place. So they haven't sort of just pushed ahead. Because again, right now, since we don't have an ordinance, if we receive an application, we would be required to issue a permit within, I believe it's 90 days or 120 days. I don't quite recall what it is offhand, but so this ordinance would at least give us some review authority over that. So I guess that's what I have for way of background.
Thank you, Jay. A reminder, this is just a public hearing. We're not taking action on this tonight, but are there any questions from the councilors before I go to the public comment? Councilor Clucci?
Thank you. Jay, we've received a fair amount of feedback from the public on this topic, and in particular, a concern that we're rushing it through. Can you maybe elaborate on the impact of taking no action or delaying action on this? I think you just said it, but I think it might be worth repeating again. My understanding is that they could basically come and do it anyways, right?
That's correct. That's my understanding of the state and federal regulations. This was brought, the conversation on this item, actually I was just sort of looking back on my my initial memorandum on this, went to ordinance committee back in December. Certainly, so that's been, I think there was at least 2 meetings with ordinance committee, I believe, before it came to council at first reading. But my understanding is that based on the state and federal regulations that if an application is submitted, there's a certain time frame in which an application would need to be, or we'd need to issue a permit. And at that point, we'd probably be just looking at electrical permits and potentially a street opening permit, which is something we require when someone puts a new pole or facility in the right of way. And that's through our Public Works Department.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Gleisting.
Yeah, so I differ with that, Jay, just based on some research. I think this has been great work. I'm glad we're on top of this. But a permit is required for these, and you know, they can't automatically start unless they get a permit from the town for these. Now, what that looks like and the regulations and how we do it definitely is going to be a play into the ordinance. But I'll use Old Orchard Beach as an example. They didn't have an ordinance in place, and some of the providers have gone there, and Old Orchard Beach sent it through their planning board process. So it's not, I don't think it's quite accurate to say that we can't do anything. I think we would be very wise to have standards in place. But also in Lewiston, they've not put an ordinance in yet, but they took it through a process. So the state law and the federal regulations both require a permit, and they are not what's called, don't quote me, but they're not called what's deemed granted. There is some federal legislation that says if the towns don't act, then they just get to go ahead, but that is not in effect right now. They could come back and say, hey, you really have to give us this under the regulations, but they don't automatically get it. There is federal regulation in play here to repeal the FCC regulations that are driving that shot clock, but we have 60 to 90 days to do that. So since we do differ, I would certainly really like to get some more opinions on that. You have said that a number of times, but I think the way you described it in your memo is actually, accurate in that it does still have to go, so they would still come to you or Tody or someone, and then you would be able to say, look, we don't have this ordinance in place, but we're going to take it through this specific process to grant this permit. Permits are required for this. And so that's that. And so I will ask the chair, as you know, I have some amendments I'm interested in bringing forward before this is actually finalized. And so I was going to kind of give a sense of what some of those amendments were. Would you like me to do that now, or take Councilor Katarina's question and then perhaps after that before the public hearing?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take Councilor Katarina because it looks like she's responding, and then we'll loop back to you.
Yeah, I want to make it again very clear to the public, because some of the letters that I received, it was like, oh, this is a big surprise, and it shouldn't be. As Jay noted, it's been in front of ordinance since December. We looked at it. When you read the ordinance, it sets standards. You do have to, I've talked to Chris Chiazzo, who's the representative, state representative, and he's on the EUT committee for the state of Maine. He actually had been calling me since last fall, making note to me and letting me know that we weren't up to date on these state and federal regulations and needed to be. So if anyone reads this proposed ordinance, there are standards on it for the 5G. And as for putting amendments forward this evening, I would ask the chair or speak my opinion is that amendments are not appropriate at this point. This is just a public hearing. I would rather see amendments put forward at the correct time, which would be, I believe it's May 6th, would be the second reading on this. Thank you.
Yeah, I do think it's important. This is a public hearing. It's not a debate amongst ourselves, and we're not taking action tonight. So, however, Councilor Gleisting, do you think you can offer an overview that's roughly 30 seconds, and then we can move to the public, or no?
30 seconds. Yeah, just to clarify, this did come to the ordinance committee on January 23rd. The first time it came back to the ordinance committee on February 20th. It was discussed for about 40 minutes, and also some really great work has been done on this. by both the ordinance committee and, well, the ordinance committee kind of, it's a very complicated topic, but by Jay. And when the ordinance committee sent it on, I mean, I have Councilor Katarina, saying this is going to get a thorough vetting by the town. Those were the word, by the council, and that we obviously need public input. So this is where I'm at. The thorough vetting is what I did. I brought forth some issues at first reading. I will say that definitely at first reading, the packet that night was 167 pages. I had trouble downloading it. There were 8 ordinances on the packet that night. This, was definitely one of them that I studied, but since first reading, I've definitely done a lot more research. Like I said, it was at ordinance twice, and there was about 40 minutes of discussion. The people that were there were the town planner. There was a representative from AT&T who was there. Tom asked a brief question, and there was no public input. And actually, it was from a canceled meeting on January 16th. So in the areas that I'm looking at, bringing some, we would be the first in Maine to do this. And so as Jay said, you have to kind of look outside of the state to more like California and other areas that have been doing this since the FCC first started talking about pushing this out in a big way. So what I've done is, and the MMA has actually put out an ordinance, which I think is very good. So that's within Maine. I don't know if you saw that, Jay, but they did. But the areas I'm looking at, one in particular, Councilor Hamill during the ordinance brought up twice. He actually brought up the spacing of these items, of these different towers. He did not get an answer. I had brought that up with Jay as well. So the spacing has to do with, do you want one on the, do you want an AT&T next to a Verizon, next to a Sprint, next to whatever. Councilor Hammer brought that up a couple of different times. Jay said he wasn't sure. The research I've done is that there are several ordinances that are spacing these out. So I have found spacing anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 feet. So that is one thing I'm interested in. And I think Councilor Hamill and Councilor Johnson might be interested in that too, because they were both interested in that topic. So the other things are minimum setbacks, notifications, and approvals and appeals. I've seen that in some of the ordinances, particularly in the MMA one. Protection of the visual and neighborhood character. There's a lot of that in there. So we're not talking wholesale changes, but just minor changes in some of these areas. And fleshing out what those special circumstances would be for putting the equipment on the ground. And also the camouflaging. There's a little of that in there, but probably not enough. A resident has brought forward that I think there has to be a little more language around the ADA. The MMA actually put more language around the ADA in theirs. And I'm particularly interested in noise. And I'm sorry, I can't read my writing on the last one, but that's it. That's kind of the high level overview. It sounds like a lot, but again, Jay has already got a lot of that in here. So it's kind of tweaks to some of those things.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Gleisting. Just for clarification, those are Councilor Gleisting's anticipated amendments that she's bringing forth herself. We as a body have not debated them or seen them yet. Obviously, we talk to each other, so I think some of us know your concerns. And if anybody is in the public that want to see her amendments, I'm sure they'll be ready sometime, let's say within the week. I'm not.
Jay has been helping me with them, and so we're kind of working through some of them. It's a slow process.
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to go to the public now. I do have 3 emails that I'm going to read. I will read those after members of the public speak. So with that, Mr. Gleason, I'm still going to skip you as I've attempted 3 times, but I will attempt you one more time when I believe we're going to talk about the Pine Point Grill. Allison Bristol, I will allow you to speak now.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm one of those not tech savvy people, so I must congratulate you because you're the first people that got me to do a Zoom meeting. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, first of all, I want to express, I hope you're all staying well and doing okay in this crazy time we're living through. And also, thank you for setting up the meetings. And I want to give a shout out to Larissa for giving me a little Zoom tutorial this afternoon. So that was very helpful. But I just wanted to take a few minutes to reiterate the concerns that I expressed to council on March 4th, and then the subsequent email that was sent on behalf of the Higgins Beach Association Civic Committee on March 20th. Pretty much they dealt with visual impact, proximity to residential structures, but I would also add the separation of antennas and to create some kind of a distance provision. And the other thing I wanted to add was I appreciated being on a call with Jay and Councillor Gleistein last week to try to come up with some ideas to, hold on, I'm just trying to get something up on my computer, excuse me. Oh, hold on. You know, to talk through some of the concerns. And one of the ideas, now I'm talking about Higgins Beach specifically, but one of the ideas that came out of that conversation was to perhaps take the language that's in 405 about temporary signs, where there are areas in town that are excluded from being able to put them in to protect the ecology and scenic views, but it's extremely limited. And down here at Bayview, what's in 405 for that is between Houghton and Morning Streets. And I've spent some time walking the beach, and there are, especially with the new construction going on, there are a lot of other areas that also have scenic views. I would say people pay a premium on their taxes because of these scenic views. And also along Bayview specifically, some of the poles are located at intersections. So the question becomes, are they on Bayview? Are they on Ocean or one of the other streets? So it would be pretty cumbersome to laundry list every single location that might have a visual impact. So what I would ask you to consider and what I would recommend is perhaps to not allow antennas or small wireless in the Scarborough shoreland zone. And that would cover scenic vistas, that would cover any kind of, ecological issues that or concerns that people might have. Then the other thing about Higgins Beach is, and I'm going to send everybody some pictures that I took. You know, the lots down here are extremely small, and the Higgins Beach Character Code, the setbacks, the minimum setback, and I believe that it includes the right of way, is 8 feet, and the maximum setback is 21 feet. So what you wind up having are poles that are pretty much on top of your house. And there's some language in the draft ordinance, I think it's in section 6, that says if the equipment can't be installed inside a pole attachments within 15 feet of ground level shall be positioned on the side of the pole facing away from approaching traffic, which means that basically these people would, anybody who had a pole put in front of their, or antenna put in front of their house would have it turned into their house, and it would be even that much closer. The separation is also important, and to, there are other ordinances. I've looked, to Jay's point, there's very little available in Maine, but if you look at what other towns are doing, and I would also specifically mention California, they have managed to put in restrictions. I mean, there's one ordinance, I believe in Mill Valley, California, that doesn't allow antennas in residential neighborhoods. So that's the extent that they've been able to go to. One question I would have is what due diligence have we done on public health concerns and the noise factor? And then the other thing I would also reiterate what Ms. Foley Ferguson said is that you know, I became aware of this, and I think you all know I pay pretty close attention. I became aware when I went to the ordinance committee meeting in February to listen to the conversation about shoreland zoning. And that's what got me paying attention. And I personally think that this is as important as the marijuana issue was. And so I would urge council to, you know, take as much time as you can to really vet it out, really think it out, really communicate as best you can with people, because this is a major, major thing, and it's going to affect us all, you know, for years and years to come. So I thank you for your time, and stay well, everybody.
Thank you. Ms. Foley, you are live now.
Oh, can you hear me now?
We can.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I don't get my picture, so you can't see Dusty. He's on my shoulder here. First of all, I want to reiterate or say, you know, very much same sentiments that Allison shared. I am feeling very blessed to be on this side of the table at this point, and I can't imagine that as leaders right now, the pressure that you must feel. It's definitely kind of crazy times out there. So thank you for your service. I have not watched previous ordinance committee meetings on this topic, so I don't speak from a place of great knowledge. And I'm certainly not an expert in cell towers, and I get bad reception at my new house. So from that perspective, I would love to see better service. All of that said, you know, what I do know without a doubt is that this is one of those topics that has always been high interest and to some degree very sensitive. And so what I would say or suggest is just merely, I do think it's a little bit more complicated than the time that's been allotted to it. I would love to see, in my world, you know, sounds like there's going to be some substantive changes based on Councilor Gleistein's amendments, perhaps. So would it be better to send it back to ordinance, vet it out a little bit more thoroughly with some more additional public input now that I think members of the public are aware? Because the other thing that occurs to me when I think about what I've listened to just this evening with the timeline is I hear two things. One, Representative Chiazzo says we are way behind the state and federal statutes. And then I heard on the next hand, but we're the first in Maine. So are we the first, like, are we way behind or are we the first in Maine? And if it's a complicated issue, then let's take our time and vet it through properly and make sure again that we have adequate public input. And I think lastly, I would just say, and Paul, you don't have to read my letter now because I'm going to say everything pretty much that I said in there. But you can share that with other counselors if you would. You know, it's the thing I know for sure is that perception does matter. And this is not an emergency. And I'd urge you to think about this on everything that I applaud you for moving forward with life, you know, and getting some things done. But at the same time, if you know there's an issue that's going to have a lot of public sentiment, maybe that's the one to hold back on for now. This one, I think, will have a lot more. I think, you know, you said that it was out in the December meeting, January, February. Well, December was the holidays. January, people were just recovering from the holidays, and February is really when the pandemic started. So, and the world as we know it, or at least as I know it, and I'm on the phone every day, all day with people, people are just kind of coming out of a fog. They're just kind of starting to realize where things are at. It's been really unprecedented. So I would just urge you to take your time, send it back for some additional input and more thorough vetting if you could do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Foley Ferguson, you are up. You're on mute.
I unmute me. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Am
I
I
unmuted you. There you go.
okay. Okay, so I'm going to start, I guess, with one of the things that Councillor Cloutier just mentioned was
Hey, Sue, before you get started, just
Yeah.
because we're making an effort not to do the video for reasons you may know of, so I'm going to turn your video off simply to treat you like everybody else. So
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
Yep.
Do it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
That's better, actually. Okay.
Now let us have it.
Okay. I think it was Councillor Cloutier, if that's who said that, wanted Jay to express what the impact of taking no action or delaying action would be. And I just want to address that real quick because there are communities all over the country, many of them, who have delayed action until they could get their ducks in order. In other words, they've done these moratoriums, or what a lot of them call urgency ordinances, where they stop everything so that they can figure it all out, until they feel super comfortable with going forward with it. I want you to know, the only counselor I think right now that knows about my experience with wireless is Counselor Jean Marie Katerina, and I think Tom is aware of it. I think Tody is aware of it, but I spent 3.5 years or more in a lawsuit with the Maine Public Utilities Commission. And as a part of that, we hired attorneys and we learned so much about the scientific aspects of radio frequency radiation, the legal issues, the procedural issues, all kinds of things. And so I have numerous contacts and a lot of knowledge that I'd like to share, but unfortunately, I just found out about this on Friday night. And, you know, for whatever reason, we are in this pandemic, and I would say my pandemic did start at the beginning of February. That's when mine started. I have 2 businesses. I'm not asking you to stop this at all. I'm asking that you, I would like you to look in more detail about some things. I know that Jay mentioned that you must allow these small cells in the public right of way, but he also said that there are certain standards that can be established. I want you to know how big of a deal this is. Some people might not think of it as a big deal. There was a company that was hired by Monterey, California, to look at a Verizon plan. Now, typically these small cells, they cover an area between 800 to 3,000 square feet. So what that means, if you do the math, that for every square mile, they might deploy 9,000 small cell towers. That's why some of these ordinances say 2,000 feet. They're a little bit up towards the higher there. So, but for every square mile, 9,000 of these small cell towers. So this is bigger than what I think was discussed. I did watch the meetings, and I think there's a lot of questions that were not asked. And sometimes if you don't ask the right question, then you don't get the information. You don't know what you don't know. But it's hard if you're not involved in it to even know the right questions. So I sent you guys, 8 real quick ones. And I added a few here, and I'll just do them quick as I can, and they will be sort of abbreviated, and then I'll put them in a better document so you can read them. But the first question, you've seen the first 4 of them, I think. Did the ordinance committee, not the staff or the ATT representatives, review any other ordinances that already exist, like in the US? Has the ordinance committee reviewed the most current court cases regarding the National Environmental Policy Act, which basically said that the NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, and National Historic Preservation must be considered in the siting of small antennas. Now that was, the FCC lost that case. That was in 2019. Did the ordinance committee discuss why they wanted the ordinance to be effective in 10 days or 30 days. There was a typo there. I don't know which one they intended, and not immediately. Is there a pending application in the wings? Are we trying to leave 30 days open for that other person to come on in? I don't know. I'm just kind of curious why it doesn't go by what the charter says, which is at midnight, the ordinance becomes effective. Would it be advisable to put a temporary moratorium on applications until some more details were worked on? Did the committee discuss any of the following? Okay, so now here's the list. Prohibiting small cells in residential districts. Number 2, hiring consultants at the expense of the applicant to review projects. 3, requiring setbacks in the right-of-way from residential districts. 4, setting up preferred locations and zones, such as industrial, commercial. 5, requiring the applicant to prove a need, to prove that there were gaps, that there is not adequate coverage or verbiage, because just like our cell tower ordinance, you can do that. Language that indemnifies the town should federal or state laws change, indemnifies the town if there's something, annual radio frequency reports and recertification fees, the American with Disabilities Act and how it should comply with that, the distance between the small cells, the possibility of macro cells instead of small cells to improve coverage. So let's say you wanted macro cells, but you don't want every 100 feet or 1,000 feet or whatever at Higgins Beach. You might just have one macro cell at the end of the beach, and that might be way better than these small cells. I want to know if the ordinance committee discussed these things, because these are really fine details, but they are super important. And every single one of these exists in some other ordinance in this country that has not been challenged yet in court, just FYI. Now, the lot has been challenged and they will be challenged, and you have to weigh that. But what I will say is that I do think you can do a moratorium for 30 to 60, 90 days on applications for these small cells if you think if delaying that action is going to be a problem. And there's no law that says you can't. Actually, this is just as complicated as somebody else said as a marijuana, if not more complicated. And then, so anyway, there's so much that I don't believe that the ordinance committee has really talked about, or at least I didn't hear it. And maybe people just didn't know what kind of questions to ask or whatever. And I know that Jay did a lot of work on this, and I'm not taking that away from him. I think that's great. I do think we need to go forward with it. I'm not saying to stop it. We definitely need to. But I do think it's your responsibility too, to make sure that interested citizens are given the opportunity. And I also think it's your responsibility to really, really show your leadership on this. If you're going to be the first one, if you really want to be the first one, then cross your T's and dot your I's and really dig into this stuff, even though it takes a long time. And even though we're doing it by Zoom, you know what I mean? And yeah, I think that's all I have, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Miss Hannon, I believe you are up.
Hi, this is my first Zoom meeting, so can you hear me
You're
okay?
great. Yep, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, okay, great. I think Sue mentioned a lot of things that I would agree with. I would urge you to take your time. This is a very important issue. I do have concerns, and I just learned about it recently. I think there's just so much going on for people right now, and I think more people would be involved if we didn't have a pandemic going on. And I think, I have concerns about, the setbacks and the spacing, and also any, higher peak power coming out of some of these small cells. And I just urge you to ask all those questions and really look into things before making a decision, and, you know, do issue a moratorium if you need more time, because I think this is very important. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Ms. Boxer, you are up in just a moment. And Ms. Boxer, if you need to be, I need to turn your video off because you might come with video. So just bear with me.
Chairman Johnson, can we just get a street address for?
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. Yes, I apologize. And I actually, yes. Ms. Boxer, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can. Yep. Can you just state your address for us from the start?
Absolutely. 16 Minuteman Drive.
Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, hi in these really strange times. And thank you for having this hearing in a way that lets us be involved. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the chance to speak. Count me among those who had no idea this was happening. I kind of consider myself well informed. So yeah, I think more time in this case would be a really good thing. I not only wanted to ask you to please take your time, but also to consider adding the residential safeguards. My concern is the antennas right outside of our homes, and I'm especially concerned for our kids. So we definitely have options. It's been said before, but keeping the antennas out of the residential neighborhoods, going to the commercial and industrial zones first, or at the very least, like other communities have done, keeping them 500 to 2,000 feet away from homes. So the wireless industry obviously will tell you there are no options because they're paid to do that, but there definitely are. And once communities have looked at the research, I think that's why they make these decisions. So if you could maybe delve into, I think I, at this point, have sent you all the email with the PDF, just some super quick, very succinct information about what other communities have done and why. You know, I'm a concerned citizen, but I'm also an investigative journalist, so I have more information than I ever wanted or needed about why communities are concerned about this. So if you could just look at some of that, just a shred of that, I think that would be a really positive thing, because I know we're not going to stop this. I don't even want to. I work from home 24/7, and I, believe me, want fast internet. But like I said, I'm very concerned about having these antennas so close to our homes and so close to our kids' bedrooms. And if you do feel the need to be speedy with this, which I hope you don't, then if you could please build in additional safeguards to keep them away from our homes and our kids. And it does, I didn't realize this before I heard all of you, but it definitely does seem like we have a real opportunity to make this a safer ordinance. If we're not up to date with the state and federal regulations, then rather than say there's nothing we can do and rushing this through without the additional safeguards, I really hope that you can put things in place like the 500 to 2,000 feet setbacks from homes, or starting with the commercial and industrial zones and keeping them initially out of the residential neighborhoods. So yeah, first out of the gate, I can be good, but definitely not with something that's being questioned and challenged around the world. And there's a reason why so many communities around the world are questioning and challenging implementation and delaying implementation. So I definitely hope that we can take our time and be safe, definitely make this the safest possible ordinance. So thank you for your service during these very bizarre times. And thank you for whatever you can do to build in these additional safeguards.
Thank you, Ms. Boxer.
Thanks.
Okay, I do not see any other members of the public that would like to speak. I do, two of the people that spoke this evening, actually I had emails to read into the record. I'm going to skip those, operating under the assumption that since they spoke, they are satisfied. And let me get you back to, but I do have one more. This comes to us from Miss Julie Tupper, and I don't have her home address, but I did forward this to Tody. I'll begin the email now. It says, I urge you all to slow down with any decisions so that more dialogue can take place with concerned citizens. My declining health since 2011 has been directly associated with the extreme Wi-Fi that is everywhere except in my home. For me, I have a Wi-Fi free home due to everything being hardwired. With the extensive research I have been doing since 2011, I'm extremely concerned that the town signing off and adopting the implementation of 5G. I have many questions to the committee. Number one, do you know that 5G does not replace 4G, but rather is yet another source of exposure? Number two, has anyone spent adequate time researching the effects of EMF exposure to not only humans, but also plants and animals? Number three, are you aware that 5G antennas will be installed every 300 feet or so, which could amount to every 3 to 10 houses? Do you know, number four, do you know that homeowners can expect to end up with a 5G cell base mounted right outside or very near their home? Are you familiar with how these work? These antennas will be so much closer to people's homes and will be stronger than ever. 5G data signals coming from your home will be extremely strong, focused, and harmful. Number five, are you aware the real reason 5G is being deployed? Number six, do you know there are many areas around the world resisting the adoption of this technology due to negative effects, either refusing to grant permission, demanding more testing, or instituting a moratorium on 5G rollout? Some examples are Florence, Italy, the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, Rome, Italy, Russia, Belgium, and the United States, San Francisco, parts of Florida, Montana, Portland, Oregon, parts of California, New Hampshire, Fairfax, California, Sonoma, California, Burlington, Massachusetts, Boneville, Arkansas, and other, she lists 5 other towns in California. Why would Scarborough jump so quickly without more information? Citizens rely on your team to look after us and not be pressured by utility companies. The 5G technology will be pervasive and powerful. It will also be one of the largest public health experiments in history. Conclusive testing and research has not been done. We are all the experiment. Thank you, and that's from Miss Julie Tupper. And Miss Tupper, if you can email me your address, I'll forward that along to the town clerk. I am going to attempt Mr. Gleason one more time as he has popped back in, and this will be the last time, sir, if this does not work. Can you hear us, sir? Can you hear us? Okay, I think I have done all I can for this situation, so I do apologize. But again, if you want to email us, I'll make sure we all get it. With that, I believe there is no other public comment from the attendees. So I am going to move on to order number 20038, a 6 p.m. public hearing and action on the request for a special amusement permit from Peak Hospitality Incorporated, DBA The Pine Point Grill, located at 240 Pine Point Road. And Tody, would you like to offer this up to us?
Yes, this application was received back in February. We went through the process of sending out letters to all the abutters. We sent out 21. We received back 7 letters, and his application is complete and he's in compliance. So it's up to the council on whether to recommend for approval or not. And his file, I believe you got his application. I believe you received it in your packet as well.
Yep. And actually, while we do this, I could probably pull this on the screen for the audience to look if they would like to. But before we do that, are there any public comments on this? I do have one in email that I'm going to read. Just a reminder, we did hear several public comments at the top of the meeting. I am going to read one public comment that just came through with email. Bear with me, I have to switch my screen.
I believe Mr. Landry is one of the attendees also. He spoke earlier and wanted to know if he could speak.
Yeah, I'll pull him up afterwards.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
This is from Mr. Mulcaney from excuse me, I don't see his address, but I'll read it. Good evening. I was in attendance of the attendance of the town council meeting just now, and it appears as if the audio has stopped working for me. I'm not sure if it's only myself, but I've since tried to rejoin, so please read this into the public record. My name is Patrick Mulhaney, and my wife Michelle and I would like to make comments regarding the special amusement permit being applied for by Peak Hospitality DBA Pine Point Grill located at 240 Pine Point Road. We live directly adjacent to the restaurant, and we feel that granting this permit would create an unwelcome atmosphere that is not conducive with the surrounding area. This is a very close together neighborhood with nearly only residents' homes in the area surrounding the restaurant. Many of these homes have children, as this is a great neighborhood to raise families. My wife and I also have small children, and while I understand the restaurant states that they will only primarily limit their volume from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., the permit does grant them the ability to play until as late as 9 p.m. Our children are typically down for bed before then, as are many other children in the area, I imagine. My wife and I also work from home, and we often need to be available on the phone at any time during the workday, which can last beyond 6 p.m. I have personally encountered an issue with external noise while I was on the phone already. The source of the music in that instance was Bailey's Campground. Although Bailey's Campground is located nearly half a mile away, when they play their music every Thursday in the summer months, it often sounds as though they were nearly next door. The thought of having the same level of noise actually playing directly next to the door is genuinely frightening. We moved to this residential area from a city specifically so it would be a quieter location. We enjoy having most of our summer dinners with our extended families outside of our deck, on our deck. My wife's grandfather is hard of hearing, my wife's grandfather is hard of hearing enough as it is. If we have music blaring from directly next door, it would become impossible to hear each other while we are trying to have a family dinner. I understand that the restaurant is trying to bring in new and additional customers, but I do not feel like loud live music is the best way to do this for a venue located in the middle of a residential community that only offers its customers parking on a private residential street. We have encountered more than enough difficulties while entering and exiting our street during periods of excessive parking or from delivery trucks blocking cars from getting to and from our houses further down the road. This type of noise would simply become a nuisance to those who live and work here every day. Please take these comments into consideration. A business has the right to try new ways to generate extra revenue, but they also have to make responsible decisions that don't negatively impact the lives of those around them. And I apologize, I was off screen there while I was reading, so I hope everybody caught that. Mr. Landry, would you like to speak? You indicated earlier that you wanted to speak. I'll give you the opportunity to speak now. Okay, Mr. Landry, if you just want to unmute your mic, please.
Yep, nope, I'm right here. Hey, my name's Paul Landry. My wife and I own Pine Point Grill. I really was unaware that this was going to cause this much heartburn in the neighborhood. It certainly is not our intention. We also hear Bailey's Campground, from down the road. We're used to the industry, so it doesn't impact us any. Certainly, it's not our intention to have any level of music like that. This was simply an acoustic guitar soloist on the patio, from 4 to 6 during our happy hour. But again, I mean, if it's going to cause heartburn, I don't think my wife and I are ready to fall on our sword over this issue. We respect the neighbors. We appreciate their continued business. We elected to stay open as a takeout facility during this time. Certainly not our intention to, create, the issues. We understand that there's some serious neighborhood activism going on, and we certainly appreciate it and respect it. Again, we had a number of people that had inquired if we were going to do something like this. We would not have done it without the appropriate application or permitting. My one question, am I allowed to have music from my radio on the patio, or would I need a permit for that as well?
Tony, do you want to answer that?
I guess my question would be, do you have music in your building? Like,
Yeah.
you know how they have music coming out of speakers and whatnot inside?
Yes, yeah, we have like Pandora for Business
Okay.
that we play on the inside, and we've played it on the patio, and I've read the ordinance a few different times to provide you guys, perhaps you could provide some clarification. You can barely hear it outside, but
I don't believe you would need a permit if you just have it, I guess, piped in music, you would call it. If you had somebody that was physically playing a guitar and singing, then you would require the special amusement permit, yes.
okay.
But the other one, no.
Okay, so this is just specifically for live entertainment, if we want to do something like that?
Correct. Karaoke, that type of thing, yes. Trivia.
Yeah, no karaoke. I'd be too inclined to want to jump in, so we're going to stay away from that.
Mr. Langer, are you requesting that we table this? Or would you like
No,
us to?
I'm not inclined to pick a fight with my neighbors. They're wonderful people. We really enjoy the area. If they've got this much heartburn about it, I'm not inclined to pursue it. Quite frankly, this was just to have the permit in the event that we wanted to do something like this. We've existed a year without it. It's not gonna break my eggs if we don't have it.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Since this is my own learning, I'm trying to come up to speed on this. So, which I applaud you, for the neighbors. I think that's awesome. So it's not an issue now. I'm just trying to understand if someone requests a special permit, to have a guitar player or something like that for entertainment, they don't have to request the exemption to the good neighbor, do they? I mean, can you explain that, Tody? I mean, you can get the special permit and not do the good neighbor piece, or I'm just trying to understand.
I believe where the good neighbor ordinance falls in place is when someone applies for a special amusement permit. By our good neighbor ordinance, we're required to notify the abutters within 200 feet of that establishment. And if they're requesting, I believe it's on the application, if they're requesting to go beyond the time frame that's listed in the ordinance, then they would have to put that on the application. And he did not request that. He just was going to do the proper thing and get a permit for an acoustic guitar and a singer. So
if you had that inside, you still have to get the permit, but you don't have to do anything with the good neighbor. Is that correct? That's what
well, if he's still going to have live music, he still has to get a special amusement permit. Where he's got the Pandora piped in music, excuse my voice, he does not require a special amusement permit.
Right. So someone can apply for a permit, but not apply for the exemption of the good neighbor ordinance.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. That's what I was wanting to
guess-
say.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we still can, Mr. Langer. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I misunderstood that piece of it, quite frankly. Again, I'm not looking to make hay here. It's not that important to me. I'm just trying to lock up whatever permit I would need in the event that my wife and I want to try some entertainment piece. I guess I read that as if there would be on the patio, outside playing music. I don't want to irritate my neighbors. It seems to me from what I just understood that if I wouldn't have put anything on there, then it would have just been a typical entertainment permit and not a requirement to reach out to my neighbors. Is that correct?
No, you would still you would still have to reach out to the neighbors. We would still have to send out notification to the abutters that you're requesting a special amusement
Gotcha.
permit. Okay,
I understand. I understand. Like I said, this isn't gonna make us or break us. It was just a means of, we like to do things by the book. That's the way we roll. And thought that this was a simple application. I didn't think that would be that many issues out there, but certainly just hearing folks, I'm not inclined to scramble their eggs over this for sure.
Councilor Johnson, do you have a question for Mr. Landry?
Yeah, I'm still not quite clear. The good neighbor policy amendment came forward because you received letters from the abutters that were against that. Is that correct?
No, Tony, you want to clear that up?
okay.
Yeah, could
So
you clear
when we
that
get
up?
when we get an application for a special amusement permit, part of that process, and it comes from I'm trying to see here that it's required that we send out notification to abutters within 200 feet of the establishment. And that is part of the application. If they're looking for an exemption to go beyond the time that's noted in the good neighbor ordinance, then they have to ask for that exemption on the application. So there's certain time frames that you can have music, like 9 p.m. and another night is 10 p.m. So if you want to go beyond that, you have to ask for an exemption through the special, that's part of the special neighbors, good neighbors.
And Mr. Landry, to be clear, your application is not asking for an exemption from the good neighbors ordinance.
Oh, no. We, this was for a happy hour entertainment. We have no intention on having bands playing till all hours, for sure. That was not the intent. The intent was to keep people amused for a couple hours after they came off the beach. And then, they're off and we're off. We are open till 9 o'clock. I've done the late night bar thing in my youth. I'm not interested in doing that now. So for us, we're a neighborhood bar and grill, just trying to provide some entertainment. Again, if there is, I'm not gonna fall on my sword over this. We just rely on your opinions.
Whatever you guys think is the best,
Whatever
we
you
understand it's a residential neighborhood.
Okay, Mr. Landry, I'm going to put you on mute now. We'll discuss it. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Okay. With that, is there any discussion? Excuse me. We do a motion first. Is there a motion?
So moved.
In a second. Is there a second?
What's the motion?
She's moving for approval first. Yep.
I had another idea, but
well, you can second it for discussion, and then we can
for discussion.
Second for discussion. Thank you very much. That's what I was thinking.
We are now in discussion mode. And Mr. Hamill, do you have another idea?
Thank you very much. Yes, we've heard a lot of feedback on this. There've been a lot of letters. So thanks to everybody from the public who spoke. This is a tricky one, and special thanks to Mr. Landry for his comments at the end. What I would propose is, rather than going up and down on this, I'd suggest we table it for now and see if that would give Mr. Landry an opportunity to withdraw the application. So I'm not telling him what to do, but I'm kind of, that's a sense I got from Mr. Landry, and it seems like he's a very reasonable guy and a good neighbor, and that might be a nice way for us all to move forward.
Councilor Hamill, I'm not going to take that as a motion to table, because then we can't discuss anymore. So I'm going to keep the discussion, and then if we motion to table, we'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Councilor Caterina.
I want to thank Mr. Landry too for his comments. It's very, it's nice to hear that someone's willing to work with their neighbors and don't want to cause issues for anybody. I think Dawn's idea is probably a good one, and I would certainly support that. So that's where I'm at.
Councilor Johnson.
I'm not sure what we're buying by tabling this item.
because I know that we have other amusement requests coming in that are gonna be similar. They're down at the beach area, they're in neighborhoods. So we're gonna have to visit this again because it's all gonna balance against the good neighbor policy. So I would actually like to see a vote on this.
Okay, any more comments?
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Hamel?
appreciate Counselor Johnson Senior's remarks. No doubt there's more work to be done on the good neighbor policy. But for this one, I think we just, try to follow the way the wind is blowing and, find an agreeable way for everybody to move on. And there's no doubt there's more work to be done. There's a whole slew of other special amusement permits to be reviewed for the summer. That's going to come up in a wave on May 20th. So I suggest we, deal with the issues that Ken is raising at that time, but otherwise table this in the interest of Mr. Landry, hopefully following through on the indications he's given to us this evening. Thank you.
So one quick point of order. This does not interact with the good neighbor ordinance as he's applied, because he's looking for music that's only between the hours of 3 and 6. So I just want everybody to be very clear that this application specifically, a lot of these applications do interact with the good neighbor ordinance. This one does not, in the sense where he's not looking for an exemption from it.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yes.
Thank you.
If he violates it, that's a different story, but that's his own responsibility.
Yep.
Councilor Clucci?
So I guess I'm a little confused now, because the way I read the application, there was a section where it says, if you are seeking an exemption from the good neighbor ordinance, explain why. And that section was filled in, and then the hours of operation were listed kind of in two places, but one was 3 to 9, the other was 3 to 6. So I guess I would like, it might be a question for Mr. Landry, is he seeking, or does he require an exemption from the good neighbor ordinance? Or could he do acoustic music with, positioned or buffers that wouldn't require that between the hours of 3 to 6? Is that something that he's seeking? Or was it from 3 to 9 with an exemption?
Yeah, I just unmuted him. So would you like to respond to that, Mr. Landry?
Certainly. Can you hear me now?
We can, yep.
Okay. Yeah, here again, a little confused. When I read the daytime hours piece on question number 7, I was looking at the from the good neighbor ordinance, what really represented, daytime hours. Certainly I wasn't going to exceed the 9 p.m. Time frame, but I don't have any interest really in going past 6 o'clock, to be honest with you. It's a happy hour event, for us. Again, I understood from one of our neighbors that even at 6 o'clock seemed like a little late for them, but if everything quieted down, my goal is to make friends, not create enemies. I serve the public. So if I lose one person, that kind of gives me some consternation. At the end of the event, if this moves to a tabling event, we'll just withdraw it. I don't think you all need to spend any more time on it than beyond tonight, if you will. If you don't have any issues with an acoustic guitar player during happy hour, and even with the amplification piece, most of these guys have small private amps. That's what they're playing through. We can resubmit, if things change in the future, if you don't approve it tonight. But like I said, I'm in the entertainment business, and there's more to entertainment than having a guitar player on my patio, quite frankly. So
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm just going to try to move this along. I apologize, but I think sorry, Mr. Landry, I didn't mean to cut you off too much. I'm just trying to move it along. Are there any other comments? So
Can I just offer procedural? Certainly a tabling and a withdrawal from the applicant would work. The other thing is for the council to simply defeat it, and it is final by that action. So just to be aware, that is an option that's in front of you.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make a.
Can I ask Tom a quick question? When he said, so is there any time limit? So you'd say the neighbors and everybody got together and said, oh, that's great. We know that's what you were going to do, and say it all worked out or something. I think it's awesome what he's decided to do, to not do it tonight. But is there any time limit between when you submit one or not, or you just can go ahead and submit another? I just want to make sure there's not.
I'm not aware of a time limit. It certainly would be better postured if it was withdrawn and then resubmitted based on clearer terms, but I'm not aware that it would, they would be prohibited from resubmitting even with a defeat.
Right. Well, I think it's great what they're proposing, and I'm happy to vote tonight.
Yeah, so
great that they're proposing to take it off the table. So, yeah.
So I actually disagree a little bit. I think these guys I think they're a little bit of victim of circumstance. I think there's a lot of unhappy neighbors for Bailey's Campground, and they run a very quaint little operation that wants to have a soloist with a guitar on a patio that ends at 6 o'clock. And I think that some of the neighbors, with very good reason, don't want additional noise. So I'm not trying to downplay the neighbors' concerns. I just want to acknowledge the fact that I think what people are fearing would happen versus what might happen, I think they might be a little bit different. But I do think Mr. Landry is taking a great approach here. You know, perhaps get together with the neighbors and have a quick meeting, and maybe I'll do a handshake deal of letting them do it one night and just get honest feedback on how it went for one night, and then reapply if it makes sense. So.
Is there any appetite out there for amending or putting a restriction on a potential approval that would say there's no exemption from the good neighbor ordinance and it could only occur between the hours of 3 and 6? Or is everybody more inclined to table it at this point?
I think I'm going to call a vote on it if we don't take, unless somebody makes a motion to table it, I'm about to call a vote on it. So.
Okay, then I'll move to amend. And I don't know if there'll be a second or not, but to amend the order to put a restriction that there is no exemption from the good neighbor ordinance, and that the music could only take place between the hours of 3 and 6 p.m.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second the amendment for discussion.
Okay, is there any discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, I think we're struggling to try to find the right answer here, and I think by we've got a second amendment. So I don't really know where it leaves us. I'm not sure that really improves things. The easiest way may be for us to just vote this thing up or down, but based upon what I've heard, this is clearly thumbs down. I don't know of any special permit that has ever not been approved. Special amusement permit, and that's a problem. And this is an area of Pine Point, like other areas as well, that is pretty fragile, and even music in those hours of the evening that's bothering that many people, that should be adequate to say no. So if we are going to stay with the original motion, fine. If we want to try to give the residents an opportunity to to resolve it themselves, or to give Mr. Landry a chance to withdraw it and live on with happy neighbors and happy customers, then I think we should give him the chance to do that. So that was the reason for my, my suggesting, any amendment at all. So.
Councilor Hayes.
Yeah, I mean, I think where I am, I think it's a kind of an eloquent solution. And again, I really applaud Mr. Landry being sensitive to his neighbors and gracefully saying he, thinks it's better or wants us to consider to withdraw. And I like the chair's suggestion that if we do vote it down at this point, maybe there's a way to circle with neighbors and do that handshake deal and come back and have a conversation. But I think based on what we've heard, and that is the challenge for all of us, that when we have businesses that are right smack dab in the middle of residential areas, I think there needs to be a sensitivity to that. So I'm fine with, I think it's given us an elegant out. He's kind of withdrawn it. I will vote to not approve it this evening. And if he wants to come back and he has his neighbor's support, I would support at that point.
Okay, I'm going to call a vote on the amendment. So Tody, would you like to call a vote on the amendment?
I'm self-muted here. Councilor Pucci?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
No.
Counselor Gleisteen,
No.
Counselor Katarina,
No.
Counselor Johnson,
No.
Counselor Hamel,
No.
and Chairman Johnson.
No.
Motion fails.
So now we're back to the main motion that is not amended, which is just the approval of the application as is. And I'm going to call a vote on that.
Counselor Clucci?
No.
Pardon me?
No.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Hayes?
No.
Counselor Gleisteen?
No.
Counselor Katarina?
No.
Counselor Johnson?
No.
Counselor Hamel?
No.
Chairman Johnson.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, moving on to order number 20039. It's a 6 p.m. public hearing and action on a request for a new food handler's license from the following. Erica Archer, DBA Wine Wise, located at 223 Pine Point Road, and JM of Maine LLC, DBA Jersey Mike's Sub Shop, located at 550 Gallery Boulevard, Suite C. And Tony?
The applications are on file. Everything is in order. Miss Archer is an in-home business. She was a business that would go to different establishments and have wine tasting. And she's not able to do that, of course, because of the COVID-19, but she can sell her supplies out of her house, which she's been approved by the planning board as well. Or she's got a permit. And then Jersey Mike's is a new business located at Gallery Boulevard. We've been aware of them prior to COVID-19. And like I said, both are in compliance and we recommend approval. As noted in the memo that I put in the packet, once Jersey Mike's receives their occupancy permit, they would receive their food handler's license if approved by the council.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that'd like to speak to this? No? Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, I'd like to call a vote. Tony?
Counselor Clucci?
Yes.
Counselor Hayes?
Yes.
Counselor Gleisteen?
Yes.
Counselor Katarina?
Yes.
Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
Counselor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take on order number 20040, I am going to call a 5-minute recess. We are going to reconvene at 7:44. I assume everybody would be okay with that.
Yes.
Counselor Hamel, your audio's on, just so you know.
Thank you very much.
Counselor Glystein with us? Well, one good thing about our situation, I did get a good bowl of chili in between.
You just got a bowl of chili in that.
I did. Homemade chili right there.
Still sign of it on your shirt, so that's a good. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here smelling scallops in the oven waiting for me, so.
Nice.
Yeah, we have to stretch this out to 8 though.
Oh, come on.
All right, I am going to go ahead and call this meeting back to order. We are now on order number 20040, an act to accept the submission of the FY 2021 budget from the town manager pursuant to section 502 of the town charter, and approve the first reading and schedule a public hearing on the proposed FY 2021 municipal school budgets for Wednesday, May 6th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I'd like to move to table order 20-040 to the May 6th, 2020 Town Council meeting in order for us to allow time for the budget process to take place and for the town and the schools to work together collaboratively to, to pick things up at that time.
Cody, did we procedurally do that okay? Was that okay? No, we need to put it on the floor first, correct? So, Mr. Hamel, let me put it on the floor and then you can motion the table.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Is there a motion to move forward?
So moved.
And is there a
Second.
Okay, are there discussions? Counselor Hamel.
I would like to make an order to move that table order number 20-040, that we move it to the May 6, 2020 Town Council meeting.
Don, we lost your audio.
Sorry, I move that we table order number 20-040 to the May 6th, 2020 Town Council meeting. So, and I'm apologies for going in and out on my audio and also for being repetitious. Did that come through okay?
Is there a second?
Second, I'll second it.
There's no discussion with a table and item. So Tody, would you like to call the vote? Tody, you're on mute.
Just stretch it out, Tony. We need 10 more minutes.
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Johnson Hamel,
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes.
Motion approved.
I don't, Counselor Hayes?
Yeah, just a quick question. Do we want to give any color commentary here on sort of what our thought process is, or?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I almost slowed him down, but we have counselor comments in just a couple minutes. So let's use those to flush it out.
Sure.
But yeah, I thought the exact same thing and made a quick judgment call. So.
Yep.
Item number 8 is non-action items. There are none. And item number 9 is standing and special committee report and liaison reports. And I'm going to go clockwise in my direction. So Counselor Hamel, do you have any?
Yes, the Appointments and Negotiations Committee will have a virtual Zoom meeting on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. And we'll actually have an executive session during that meeting or following the regular meeting in order for us to address contract negotiations issues. So, thank you.
Counselor Glystein?
No update.
Counselor Johnson?
Oh yeah, communication committee met earlier this week and regathered our thoughts since our last meeting, since the world turned upside down. And we've agreed to hold some workshops to build out a rollout plan for Be Informed, dovetail it into the new website. And as a side note, I think the comments that we had tonight, because of the small cell, the people that said they were actually unaware of that. I know we post things as agenda items under the committees, but I think this is a great example that we need to come up with a better method to alert people of certain issues, if not all issues, that would be interested, so they don't have to just continuously go to the website, try to find something. So I think, again, it's going to be an item of discussion of how to make our communication more robust with push technology. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, just quickly, the Greater Portland Council of Governments did meet this week to coordinate efforts primarily related to COVID-19. And one of the items that they are looking to build consensus on and notify the governor anyways, that's important to us, is that revenue sharing and general purpose aid for schools be held whole, or what the current expectations are. So in other words, the funding that the state's going to receive from the CARES Act be put towards keeping those programs whole. So that's, other than that, I look forward to the committee work heating up and the budget work that lies ahead.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Caterina?
Yes. Now I want everyone to listen carefully. There is an ordinance meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and we will be discussing roosters. In other words, not allowing roosters anywhere but in the RF zone on lots of 2 acres or more. And there will also be some discussion. We had some people who are still concerned about fireworks. They'd like to see them removed from the coastal areas, in part because of environmental concerns and the plovers and birds, and they've got a whole number of things. We're going to discuss that. And then I also have on there, I know we had talked about discussing growth, given the new world we're in. I just want to have a discussion with my fellow ordinance committee members on what should we be doing in the meantime, and how do we want to move forward, or do we just want to wait for a minute, or what we want to do. So please take this as a communication, straightforward communication as to what's going on in ordinance tomorrow at 4 on Zoom. That's it.
Councilor Hayes?
Yeah, good evening. I think I'll, give a little bit of color commentary here and just share that yesterday the Joint Finance Committee met around the budget and where we are, and a little bit of the update there was the budgets that we originally saw. The original numbers came in with about a 5.5% increase, but that assumes a lot of things that we may change over time. I think we all recognized as both the Joint Finance Committees that probably is not, given the times, given the circumstances, that probably wasn't a place that we should start from. And I will give credit. I think both the municipal side and the Board of Education delivered on the goals that the finance committees had established back in time before our world, as was characterized earlier this evening, kind of has really fundamentally changed. They actually asked for some guidance from the town council on, if the 5.5% increase wasn't where we thought the community could support, given the circumstances, wanted some guidance on what a new target might be. And we discussed that at the Joint Finance Committee meeting. We also discussed that at a special town council workshop that immediately followed. And I'll let probably the chair summarize the outcomes of that and why this evening we are kind of recalibrating the budget and the budget process. We're going to go back and rework the numbers given the circumstances, unprecedented circumstances we find ourselves in, to get to a place where we can balance what we need as a community for services and what we think our community members are going to be able to afford given just sort of the circumstances. So with that, I'll conclude my comments and defer to others.
Thank you, sir. I have a couple comments. One, on Monday morning, I met individually with Christina Egan, who is the executive director of GP cog. So for those of you watching, that's the Greater Portland Council of Governments. Her and I had a very good collaborative conversation for about an hour. We, as a result of that conversation, she was kind enough to put together this Thursday. Don Hamill and I will be attending I believe they call it Chairs in Circles workshop. And it is, it's 2 members of surrounding towns. Typically it's the chair and the vice chair, and it's 2 members of surrounding towns, town councils, to get together and talk about the issues that are facing us today. So we're doing a special one of those on Thursday, Don and I, and I'm really looking forward to it. We'll be sitting around with other chairs, other vice chairs of council to discuss, what are you doing during the COVID-19 crisis? So I think in these times, I think it's really easy for us to feel like we're almost in a silo or working just within our town, so to speak. But I think we can all learn from each other to see what's working and what's not working. So Don and I will be attending that on next Thursday, and I'm excited in the sense where I'd love to see perspective from our neighboring towns. Number 2, we had our normal weekly meeting with the town manager, Tom, today. It lasted quite a while, mostly because, there's a lot of uncertainty. So a lot of times we find ourselves, I think, just discussing how uncertain things are. And, one of the things that we've agreed to do within, I believe the time we're looking at is 2 weeks from today, or somewhere within a 2-week time frame, to have a workshop where we bring in possibly somebody from GP Cog, possibly somebody from SEDCO, of course, Tom himself, Jay Chase as well, to give us a little bit more certainty, or at least try to paint some sort of snapshot of where we are as far as the economy is concerned. Some of the things that we discussed was the current state of affairs with excise tax, and is there a budget shortfall for this current year? Do we need to look at adjusting the forecast of excise tax for next year? Jay Chase could offer us, what does the building permit pipeline look like? Is there a reduction in activity? Is the activity staying strong? Has he seen any withdrawals? Someplace SEDCO could offer to us. SEDCO has been very much involved in getting companies their Paycheck Protection Program loans and their SBA loans. So SEDCO can start to perhaps paint a picture for us of how many Scarborough businesses are actually receiving these loans, how many have been approved for these loans, and what are the expectations for those loans. GP Cog could possibly give us a more regional perspective on what other towns are doing. So we're working on a workshop 2 weeks from today to really, one of the reasons why we're delaying the first reading is we're trying to eliminate uncertainty, which clearly that will not happen, but we can get as close as humanly possible. So hopefully in 2 weeks, we'll have a workshop that will help us move away from uncertainty and give a little bit of insight into where we currently are. To that point, to Peter Hayes, he mentioned this quite a bit, but the end result of our workshop yesterday was essentially the BOE and Tom and staff, all staff across both departments have been incredibly gracious enough to agree to rework their budget before first reading. We've asked them to go back and work with a goal of a 2% mill rate increase for a starting point at the first reading. To me, that shows an incredible amount of willingness to collaborate with each other. I don't think, I'm pretty confident saying that has never happened before. We're in our uncharted territory, and we have members of the town and the BOE that are stepping up to say, that are recognizing that. And we're actually going to be reworking a budget before first reading. And so that was the result of the activity yesterday. That is the reason why we quickly tabled the budget today, was the understanding that we have some work to do and time is our friend. Right now, we're as uncertain as possible. So if we can take our time and we can get closer to a clearer picture of what lies ahead, then we can all benefit from it. So those are my updates. And I believe item number 10 is the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I didn't appreciate that there was a choice last night, but interesting that you characterized it that way.
Yeah.
No, I certainly appreciate the guidance given, and I do appreciate the time. And immediately this morning, I reached out to my counterpart, superintendent, and we will hopefully use our time wisely. I'm going to look to Councilor Hayes to help convene the joint committee process. I think it'd be very helpful if we get that started sooner than later, so we can really kind of understand what our individual targets are. And I'm quite hopeful, at least on the town side, when we have some clarity in that regard, that by the time we get to first reading, I'll be able to describe in great detail the sorts of efforts that I've undertaken to achieve that goal. And I can't speak for the school. I think they've got a different set of challenges. We're all doing this in this remote environment, which adds to just a level of challenge to the exercise for sure. So that's my intent. I've certainly been busy with budget right along and will continue to right up to first reading and beyond. As we think about how we're going to deal with this with the uncertainty, I've been trying to think of it in terms of long-term and short-term solutions. So the budget for next year, those are the longer-term things that we need to be thinking about. And I don't have any better insight than all of you. And so I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We need the collective wisdom of all of us to look at the data, to understand it as best we can, and make choices to the best of our ability going forward. In the short term, there's other pressing matters that need to be attended to. I have taken some early action by hiring freezes, furloughing part-time employees, and delaying projects this spring. The point of all of that is to really keep our powder dry. By that I mean save as much money as we can this year, so as to put it forward if we need to help in the budget, or build our reserves at this point. What's certainly necessary going forward, and with the governor's order yesterday, there's been really no change to the executive orders that require stay at home and the closure of public facing facilities. So at this point, we're still on track for the end of the month. It's quite likely, in my opinion, that might be extended further. And so all of this goes into the calculus of how we deal with staff in the meantime. The real challenge is, as soon as these doors open, there's going to be a reasonable expectation and frankly a demand for service. Some of the front-facing services we offer, no new car registrations, for instance, are able to happen at this point. I expect there'll be a lot of activity early on. And so as we think about furloughing full-time employees, I also need to have those folks available when we need them. We have a firm understanding, I think, now of all the state and federal programs, and I think we're coming up with some creative ways to maximize access to those. And I'm really trying to strike the balance between job preservation, achieve maximum budget savings now and in the future, and also be in a position to provide service delivery at not just a minimal level, but a level I think our residents will expect. And keep in mind, all the while, we have vast majority of staff working remotely and performing their daily duties. Though differently, we're still doing the work. So those two things are clearly have been big focuses for me and will continue to be. I do expect as soon as early next week to be able to share the details of my proposal to deal with staff in the near term. And some of those plans may extend into the new fiscal year as well. The other area of great focus is the public safety building. I think I heard rumor that Councilor Hayes happened to make his way in there yesterday. He can attest to the fact that it is taking shape. Furniture is delivered and in place. In fact, we are moving as we speak. So we have reached the milestone of substantial completion, which is a big deal, and have a temporary certificate of occupancy for the second level. All of this, keep in mind, has been happening in the midst of the uncertainty. And so it's frankly remarkable that we are at the point we are. And I credit an incredible team of skilled builders getting us to this point. But it's been no simple feat, I assure you. The other part of this I've reported in the past, I will be part of a day-long mediation, virtual mediation tomorrow. A lot of time sitting here at my desk, I think, waiting for the mediator take me out of my private conference room and Zoom. And the reason the town's in the middle of that, though I do not expect any financial exposure for the town, certainly nothing that we haven't already budgeted and is expected. But we have contractual relationships with the architect and have separate relationships with the general contractor. And the dispute is really among those two parties. We are the one in between. And so we're a party, therefore, to this proceeding. And I'm certainly anxious to get it resolved. This is a required step in the process. Should it not be successful, arbitration would be the next step. So for those of you trying to reach me tomorrow, I will be at work, I assure you, but I'll be attending this mediation. I will have breaks, I suspect, and be able to respond, but just be mindful that I'll be out of commission for so long periods. With that, I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Tom? Okay, I'm gonna go to Councilor comments are next, and I'll go in the opposite direction. So Councilor Hayes.
Yeah, just, I mean, given these unprecedented times, just hope everybody stays healthy and well. That should be the focus for all of us, our families and friends and loved ones. How do we navigate through these challenging times? So those are my thoughts for the evening. On a different note, I'm sure people heard today, kind of insult to injury, there was a huge explosion at a paper mill in Jay. There were 500 people that are their jobs now. I think the mill was damaged. The good news is no one was injured. The really bad news is that I understand that paper mill manufactured toilet paper, so there's going to be ramifications for all of us. I'm just kidding, but I'm glad everybody was healthy and well. But it's just insult to injury to me. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Katarina.
Yes, I don't want to talk too long, but I do want to thank the people of Scarborough for everything you're doing. I have been doing some of those senior phone calls. Again, I'm so impressed by the stories I'm hearing from the seniors about their neighbors and friends who are checking in on them, making sure that they have what they need. It's heartwarming to hear that. And kudos to town staff who are taking time also to do that. I know Public Works has been delivering food. I mean, we're doing a lot of things to help this community in need. I was just struck by, this is a historic event that we're living in. And there's a quotation from Churchill that I heard this past week that I thought was just something to think about, that this is not the beginning of the end, because everyone's like, oh yeah, this is going to get done and we're going to go back to where we were. This is not the beginning of the end, but it's the end of the beginning. And it's just something to think about. And he made that statement at World War II, the beginning of World War II, around that time. I think it's a chance to do some really good things, and let's look at the good and move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Clucci.
Sure. Kind of echo what the other councilors have said. I did want to, I know we didn't have much chance to talk about the budget discussions that we had yesterday. So I just wanted to echo what's already been said in that I think at a minimum anyways, the council demonstrated that we are committed to coming in as low as we can or minimizing the impact on the taxpayer. And we were able to kind of hover around 2% consensus yesterday, but really what we're signaling is that we're willing to do the work to try to find out where there might be opportunities to help our community be better positioned to recover. And I know that Tom's taken a lot of steps to lead in that effort, and I'm willing to do the work as part of the finance committee, and I think everybody else has expressed that they're willing to as well. So, one of I used to help coordinate planning for a group of regional companies, and one of the things that my boss used to always say is that, planning is really important. He said planning is paramount, but plans are useless. And I use caution when I say that, but the idea behind it was that you plan so that you understand where you're going. And once you understand where you're going, the piece of paper behind it is less important. And I think at a time like this, I know there's some concern that we're proceeding with the budget process, but I think what we're really doing is helping us to navigate the situation we find ourselves in so that we understand where we need to go and where we need to be next year. So, and we're not going to guess right all the time. It's a perfect time to challenge our assumptions and to ask questions and question what we're doing. Other than that, I'd say stay positive. We're going to emerge from this and I'm sure, be stronger than before. Be nice to people and take care of your neighbors.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Johnson?
It's 8:07. I'll keep it short. I want to thank you guys for putting together this workshop in 2 weeks. Sounds great. We're going to get some good facts to support what John just said, instead of reading snippets from the Portland Press. So looking forward to it. Maybe we can even add a couple other guests between now and then. So looking forward to it. Thank you.
And not to talk out of turn, but any input any of you guys have, please email us. We're just formulating this, so by all means, help us. So, Councilor Gleisten?
Yeah, so I'd like to say I really appreciate Councilor Ken Johnson's comments about communication. Obviously, it's a really important topic to me. I'm probably on the phone with residents, a couple hours a day with a lot of different issues. I think it's more important than ever for us all to reach out to people. Some folks are still having, trouble with the technology. We're still working on it. I think what we've achieved so far is great. I would just like to encourage us to, be careful about what we bring forward under these circumstances. I think we can keep working behind the scenes. I'm looking forward to accomplishing things, but when it comes to the formal processes of first reading, second reading, public hearings, I think those are a lot more challenging, and they clearly take a lot of time because, we have to bring someone on to speak, and then maybe somebody couldn't speak, and then, that type of thing. So I think we should really, especially around the planning board and ordinances, and, even in the budget, which we definitely have to do and go forward, we've got to be sensitive to people being completely overwhelmed in their own life right now. This is the number one theme that I'm hearing when I'm hearing talking to people. People who spent all day applying for loans and then it disappeared off their computer and they're starting again. I think the number one thing that we can do is not add additional stress and not cause harm. For people, not cause stress for people thinking that, they're being left out of a process. So, I would encourage us to prioritize, what we're bringing forward. I know today the planning board started meeting at 4. It was about the Downs master plan. And I don't know how long they went, but, I think we got to be a little cognizant of things that we didn't do in the old world and make sure we mimic those because, we had our workshop starting at 5. So, we've always had some meetings overlapping, but certain meetings have never overlapped. So that I am not being critical in any stretch of the imagination, but I am being cautious in saying, let's just slow down and look at the big picture. Let's make sure that, we're doing things judiciously. I also appreciate the workshop that you're talking about. I think that's going to be really good. And I especially appreciate the BOE. The first workshop yesterday was great. I felt like I learned a lot from the BOE. I'll be real honest on the second one. It was a little confusing to me. I'm not quite sure how we ended up. I know how I weighed in on consensus, but we had been talking about tiers and then tiers just kind of went away. But, I do fear that, as I said on March 23rd in the FinCom, before we kind of knew how bad this was, we really need to look at what is the worst case? Because if we get to that point, and then we have to quickly do it, I just think, the tiers were going to give us kind of a way to frame, wow, look at the pain at a 0% increase. Because, quite frankly, the most email and comments that at least I'm seeing is, 0% flat budget. And we all know after talking to the BOE how difficult that will be. And we're not going to look at that at this point, but You know, I'm not quite sure how that happened in the second workshop, but I do appreciate the BOE and everything they're doing. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hamel.
Yes, building briefly on a couple of things that folks have said already. You know, I want to thank the public for their involvement and engagement tonight. I think it's tough to do that. It's tough to get connected and get online and speak freely, but I thought we had a really robust discussion tonight, and I thought that was very well done. So that to me is very promising in Zoom land here, YouTube land. I did also want to just say special thanks to both finance committees. You know, we started this joint finance committee process over the summer, and the thing has really gotten legs. And I think it's really helping us now in terms of providing an informal channel to work issues that is ultimately going to get us to a much better place with the budget. But thanks to Peter, you know, and our finance committee, you know, Betsy and John Clucci, and also Sarah Layton and the Board of Ed finance team. You know, also special thanks to Tom and staff. I know Tom has got a full-time job of running the town in addition to doing all of this stuff and responding to all of our extra requests. That's an enormous amount of work, and I know it's hard to do. He's working remotely, and he's on all the conference calls and stuff like that. So Tom, thank you for that and your leadership and your initiative on those things. You're being open to our requests. And I just want to reassure the public that we're going to take the time necessary to make the best decisions we can. We're going to be deliberate and try to be as fair and informed as we can in our deliberations. So we appreciate your support and know that everybody is working with new challenges and are all in basically out of our comfort zones. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, a couple of quick things. First of all, there's been the theme tonight was about slowing down the agenda, perhaps making the agenda limited to essentials. First of all, I hear that, and I think that's incredibly important, and I agree with it by and large. We did have, I don't know if everybody recalls, but we did have 7 weeks of meetings, and each one of those meetings had a workshop before it. So we were in a 7 consecutive week workshop / meeting timeline going into this season, so to speak. So I think Dawn and Tom can attest, we have eliminated, given our foresight, we eliminated as much as we could of non-essential business. So we're going to miss 1 or 2 on the way, and I think that one of the strengths of this council is that we're willing to accept if we miss 1 or 2 along the way, and we'll do it better or revise accordingly. So I just wanted to say that we did have a stretch of a lot of activity that was actually supposed to happen within this 2 to 3 month period. Secondly, I just wanted to publicly thank Peter Hayes. I think that his leadership in this budget process thus far has been incredibly helpful for me. Him and I have had some very productive conversations over the phone. I really appreciate the fact that as chair, that somebody else is helping usher in and guide this difficult process, because I think it's really important to for me, I don't have the bandwidth to do that, so to speak, and so I'm incredibly grateful for him. I want to also thank Leanne, the chair of the BOE. Her and I have talked about every other day. We're both well aware that the way the government's structured and the system is that we're pitted against each other from time to time, and somebody's the good guy and somebody's the bad guy. But I greatly appreciate the fact that her and I speak, and it's always on friendly terms, regardless of how tough the conversation can be. 2 last points regarding roosters. I have, as a guy who owns 3 roosters, 2 of which have gone to Happy Rooster Land recently. Yeah, I live in RF, and they should probably stay in RF. And lastly, I just wanted to let Mr. Landry know, the owner of the Pine Point Grill. I have not been to the Pine Point Grill probably in about 8 years, and I assured Mr. Landry that I will be visiting his takeout service within the week. So he has won a new customer for me, and I live about 5 miles away, and I will make the trip. And I think it's rare that we see people that are incredibly gracious to their neighbors and to other residents, and that's what he did tonight, and he should be rewarded for that.
Yep.
So those are the end of my comments. So for that, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Cody?
Counselor Kuchik,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina.
Yes.
Excuse me, Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnston.
Yes.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Good night.
Great meeting. Thank you.